Right. So there's answering another question of ignorance. I don't like to say it's a stupid questions, but hey, let's have questions born out of ignorance, right? One of the questions born out of ignorance, I addressed this already in our previous video, but I'll address it again for the gain of people who can't find it in themselves to go through all my videos. There's a lot of videos, right? It was over 1,000 videos on my channel right now, right? So let me talk about this topic, in which Muslims or Christians just ask yourself, is it permissible to be vegetarian, right? Within your religion, right? Muslims, and especially because Eid al-Adha sacrifice, they tend to ask themselves if a lot of Muslims actually want to be vegetarian, right? And a lot of Muslims actually do like that Eid al-Adha sacrifice, right? A lot of Muslims actually do not like, especially the people who just be doing the butchering, right, or slaughtering and what you all call the halal way, right? A lot of Muslims actually do like to do this, and a lot of people actually do not like to take part in the Eid al-Adha sacrifice, right? So this is for Muslims who, as I always say, my videos are not intended for the masses because the masses will literally slaughter me, right? As was done actually in a different way within the past 4 years, right? But anyhow, my video is for the few Muslims who actually want to come out of the Eid al-Adha sacrifice ceremony or ritual sacrifice and is answering the questions. The question, is it permissible within Islam to be vegetarian, right? And the question is, you don't need permission from your religion to be vegetarian, right? There is no permission, right? In fact, it should be the other way around. Is it permissible to eat meat within my religion? Because my religion says it is not the blood or the flesh that reaches Allah, it is your piety. So actually, a question should be the opposite way around. The book says, hey, grains, fruits, all these things are provided. Those are signs for people who use reason, right? So a question should in fact use your question should actually be the opposite way, right? Is it permissible to eat meat in my religion? That should be your question, right? Not whether it's permissible to be vegetarian. This is how they inverted the reality, right? As human beings with the highest form of intelligence, at this point in history, we're supposed to be consuming certain foods and staying away from certain foods, right? Because of our intelligence, right? Because of evolution and our intelligence, right? So that's why I've been suggesting. I'm not saying everybody go vegetarian one shot, but the book actually recommends, hey, if you eat meat, you move away. You start to eat seafood, right? Consume seafood, and then you progress in consciousness from there, right? You move forward. That's what forward movement is. Ascension. That's what forward movement is. Ascending in your mind and your consciousness, right? So the question is it permissible? People ask if it's permissible to be vegetarian within Islam. Hell yes. Why would it not be permissible to stay away from violent food? Why would Allah or God say that you're not allowed to do that? So anybody Muslim could be vegetarian at any point in time. And Muslims should in fact gravitate towards this way of life. Right? If you can't do it now, but you do it slowly, right? Eaters do Eid al-Adha sacrifices, stop doing that, right? Because cows being manufactured, what injected, right, and blown up, right? Chickens are doing this with chickens all the time. They're doing this with animals, right? Rearing of animals for the purpose of these things. Now, if you eliminate these ritual sacrifices, you don't need to be rearing animals for these purposes, these animal sacrifices. You don't need to be rearing animals, right, in order to slaughter for the sake of God or Allah, right? That is not a correct practice within the religion. That animal sacrifice is not a correct practice within the religion, right? So, yes, as Muslims, you could and you should actually gravitate towards a lifestyle of less violence, right? Less violence. That should be the aim. Nobody is saying to give up meat completely, especially because it's a culture. Meat is a cultural phenomenon, right? You grew up in a household, you're eating meat all your life. It's a cultural phenomenon, right? It's a cultural thing. It's a tradition of eating meat, right? So, yes, as Muslims, you could and you should gravitate towards less violence on your plate. right? That's the answer to that question. Especially people, you want to go to Hajj, you want to do this, you want to go that. Imagine you're going to such a sacred pilgrimage, right? This is not a guilt to anybody, but imagine you're going to this thing called Hajj, right? Any pilgrimage, right? It's supposed to be the meaning of it. Right now, I don't subscribe to Hajj or anything, right? Or any pilgrimage because I know that the journey is within, right? But for the sake of people who believe in the outward journey like that and taking that outward journey, right? The journey is supposed to be to you, right? A sacred one. Meaning that you're supposed to purify your internals. Your internals, right? Because that journey is one between you and Allah, right? That journey that you're taking is between you and Allah, right? Not anybody else. So it's a sacred pathway towards God, right? And a sacred path towards meeting with God, right? So when you're making that journey now, right, is incumbent upon you, right, to clear. You don't have to. It's not only about bathing your external 5 times a day, right? You need to take an internal purification process too, right? Which means refraining from certain foods for a bit, right? In fact, before you go to Hajj, you shouldn't be consuming meat at all. You shouldn't be consuming meat at all at Hajj. Before Hajj or when you go to Hajj, when you go on that journey, you should never be consuming meat while you're on that journey, right? Because the journey is about our internal cleanliness. So gossiping, obviously, right? That is within the religion. You stay away from ill speech, right? During that journey, right? Stay away from gossiping about others, talking about others, right? It's a sacred journey, right? Ill speaking, backbiting, right? Your thoughts, watch your thoughts towards others, right? What you consume, your alcohol, no alcohol consumption, no smoking, right? No meat, right? Because that pilgrimage is a sacred pilgrimage between you and you and Allah alone, right? So, backbiting, gossiping, alcohol, meat, smoking, right? All these things. Stay away from those types of things and people, right? Upon that journey. That's the straight and narrow path. Once you go on a Hajj journey, you're not supposed to be eating meat while you're on a journey, right? In fact, it's supposed to be a period, if you a fasting period, if you go if you're upon that journey, you're supposed to be so straight that hey, you're not even probably thinking about food and thing, right? To make it to that journey, if you choose that path, right? You don't even supposed to be thinking about them thing, right? So that meat and thing not even supposed to be a thought in your mind, right? So right. So there's to answer that question because and that's probably why in Islam probably Hajj is actually because when I look at it, right, all religions it end up being the same anyhow, right? It end up being the same anyhow because look in the Vedic religion, non-violence is just explicitly stated as a principle, right? It's just explicitly stated so every religion actually brings you around to the same point, but it just have a different route, right? Which is what my philosophy has always been, right? So in Hinduism, right, you have the Vedic Hinduism, non-violence is explicitly stated as the main principle, right? Ahimsa, non-violence, right? And that's just it. In Islam now, you have Hajj as one of the pillars, right? So it bringing you back to the same principle, but in a different way, right? So for Hajj, yeah, you're preparing yourself for that journey, right? You're preparing yourself to go up on that journey, and to prepare yourself to go up on that journey, you have to take that path of non-violence. You have to stay away from these animal sacrifices. You have to do all those things. You have to bring yourself to that awareness, right? That's what the book says is not blood or flesh or riches, God, but your piety, right? So you have to bring yourself to that awareness in order to go up on that journey, right? So that's what I'm saying, right? Is not and even in esoteric Christianity, I mean a sacred Christianity, right? It's the same principle, right? You want to take a pilgrimage to Jerusalem to where you believe Jesus Christ was born, right? You want to take a pilgrimage to where Jesus Christ was born or where the story said that Jesus Christ was born. It's the same concept, right? Nobody died for my sins, but it's the same concept. You purify your internals, you stay away from certain foods because it's a sacred pilgrimage. right? So before you embark on any pilgrimage, right, it could be internal, it could be external. Before you embark on any pilgrimage, right, is to make sure your internals clean, right? Meaning what you're consuming, right, what you're talking to and about, right, all these things, right? I don't go on no outer pilgrimage, right? Because it don't make no sense. You go on an outer pilgrimage, hey, you come back home at the end of the day, right? It don't make no sense. So I do identify as and our religion and all is an external thing. Religion is an external thing. Right? You go in there, it's a set of crowd, is this, that, right? I don't really fancy crowds. That's why I will never go to Hajj, right? Not because I'm too dirty for it, because I just don't fancy crowd and I don't believe in an outward journey to God. Right? So anybody can mind control me in that way now, right? I just saying, I wasn't born a Muslim, right? I'm not born any religion. You just be born into a culture. You don't be born into any religion. You just be born into a culture of your forefathers or a culture of whatever or whatever you was born into. You just be born into a home, right? And the home does have a religion. Right? You just be born into a home and the home does have a religion. Now it's for you to come out of a trap now, right? Because it's another trap, right? It's another trap. You're born into a religion. So it's now for you to differentiate now, hey, is my religion right? And is everything according to my religion right? Right? Some things might be neutral, right? Some things might be neutral. I don't even see Hajj as neutral, right? But the mere fact that some people have money to go to Hajj and others do as Muslims, right? Or even non-Muslims. If I wanted to go to Hajj now, but if I don't have the finances for it, and I had to watch everybody, a whole crowd of elite Muslims go and make that turn. Nah, boy, right? So anyhow, my point is that you don't being a vegetarian in Islam, right, is not a matter if you could do it, right? It's a matter is a matter of you don't need permission by any god. You don't need permission by any religion, right, to live a non-violent life, right? Good.